Welcome into the Voice of Reason right here on the Mid-America Network. You made it! You finally made it! It was a heck of a week. We were just thinking earlier this morning as we're getting ready, doing the show prep, and the other individuals are trickling into the studios. The sports guys across the hall, the newsman, Mr. Rick Everett himself, and we're all chatting and thinking, even though that this has been a holiday week per se because of New Year's on Monday, the new year with the kickoff of 2018, the recapping of 2017, trying to get all the paperwork done, trying to get the fourth quarter things wrapped up, trying to get all things all ready to go for a brand new week. With everything going on this week, really is one of the longer weeks, it feels like, just duty-wise. And now we get the weekend to where next week, even with a 5-day week, it may seem like it goes a little bit quicker than what it did this. And we said duty. Welcome into the Voice. I can't believe I say that right off the bat. Facebook. That's what you said. Dorks. Welcome into the Voice of Reason. It's a Friday. Whatever's on your mind, whatever's troubling you, I'm your political therapist. It's time to work through it together. It truly is an open line to you today for a free-for-all Friday. Let's make it happen. All right. Let's do it. 316-721-8255. 316-721-TALK. If you want to join into the program, it is an open line to you today. Anything that you want to talk about. There have been lots of stories that we have not covered on the show today, or this week, because we just have not had time to do so. Federal issues, a few state issues that we'll get to today, a few topics that people have hinted that they wanted to talk about, but we have not done so because just it wasn't the right time to do so. So today, it's open lines to you. We have one guest at the top of the 8 o'clock hour. Other than that, it is open lines to you on anything that you want to talk about that we've mentioned, that we've not mentioned, anything bothering you, troubling you. You're more than welcome to call in, chime in, give your input, give your opinion, because that's what this show is all about, no matter where you are. Here in the Wichita area, out in Garden City on the western part of the state, or beyond that, even outside of the state of Kansas, what is important to you? And even if it is maybe what your political New Year's resolution may be for 2018, I want to hear from you. 316-721-8255. Shoot me a message all over social media, on the Voice of Reason page on KQAM, on the KQAM's page on Facebook. You can shoot me a message on Twitter at Who's Your Reason. The Facebook live feed is rolling. It is up and going there, and you can also email me, Andy at KQAMradio.com. I do want to start off today as we do kind of finish up the recapping of 2017 and what 2018 is going to look like. Now, throughout this week, we've talked about the benefits of being in Kansas, being in the Mid-America region, and the potential of what we have to do with activism and what we can do to change things here in our state and in our region to make it more conservative, to make it more traditional, to make it what it was intended to be in the first place. If we look at some of the other states in the country, they're not going in that direction. Now, Kansas and Oklahoma, for two examples, were the prime examples when they were looking at the tax reform at the federal level. And they were trying to use our two states as the failed conservative experiments of slashing taxes. And then we see what we saw. And obviously, we've talked about that to a great extent. So even though that we are going more traditional, at least we'd like to be, they've been looking at us under the microscope on what's going to happen in the Mid-America region when it comes to agriculture, when it comes to some of the other industries, when it comes to unemployment rates, when it comes to success, when it comes to growth, when it comes to sales. They're going to look at us. They're going to keep that microscope on us, but they are looking at other places in the country as well. I'd like to say unfortunately, because I think they should pay attention to us more frequently, because we're not just the flyover area. We're not the flyover country. We are the heart and soul of this nation. Unlike some of the other states, let's say like on the western coast, like California. California, yeah, it's under the microscope. We're watching what they do because they're going in the wrong direction. And most people say, yeah, well, yeah, duh. They're going in the wrong direction. They're fighting the federal government on everything Trump's doing just to spite him. They are trying to open up their borders to make it easier for illegal immigrants to come in. They are trying to create the nice little socialist healthcare system for the state, the way that Colorado was trying to do, the way the Massachusetts did, under Mitt Romney, by the way. Nice little conservative man he is. And they're trying to make college free. They're trying to do this, trying to do that. They've regulated themselves ridiculously. They just increased another 72 cents on a CO2 tax. 72 cents to tax you to breathe, to drive, to barbecue, to do whatever you do to try and fight CO2. It comes out of your state income tax because they have so many regulations through their Department of Environmental whatever, their environmental agencies, the EPA, that they regulate the smell of your barbecue going over your fence to your neighbors because that is a smell violation. They regulate the car that you drive because how dare you actually drive something that produces CO2 into the atmosphere. They try and regulate you for breathing or for passing gas or even the animals for passing gas because they are destroying the environment. So now they have, just imagine that, 70 cents additional. I don't even know what it was before, but they just increased it 70 cents for a statewide tax on everybody in order to fight climate change. Is it working? No, not really. San Francisco is still one of the smuggiest cities in the country. Smog and smug. They are one of the filthiest, and they still have not gotten their stuff together to be able to operate functionally as a society. They don't know how many homeless people they actually have floating around. I don't know if you've seen the videos all over social media, but California, I don't even know where it is. The communities of the tent dwellers, the homeless, and there's cities of them in these tents living. People are biking down the road, yada, yada, having a nice little time biking because they want to save the environment, not drive a car. So they're riding their bicycle and they're rolling on down the highway. And all of a sudden, they come across a nice little town of hundreds of tents pitched up because that's where they live. And they've created a society there, not paying taxes, not contributing to society. And everybody's okay with it. They just allow it. That's what you're up against in the state of California. And then when they come out and say, we're not gonna pay for state funded travel to the state of Kansas because they treat people poorly out there. Good. Stay out there. We don't want you to come here anyways. It's okay. We don't want you to taint our traditionalism and the greatness that we have here in the Mid-America region. Stay where you are. Hopefully you can just do your thing, be happy. Look, if you're happy with the way that you live in California, all the power to you. And I know we actually, it's really funny because for our downloads for the podcast for the show, Kansas obviously has the number one most amount of downloads for the show, but the second state with the highest amount of downloads for the show for whatever reason is California. I don't even know anybody in California. I know a few people in California just by guests that I've had on the show, semi-associates that I have, but actually like close friends, family members. I don't know anybody in California. So those of you that do download it, awesome. Congrats. And I appreciate you very much for actually listening to a Kansas show because this is really cool. But the fact that you live in a state like that, I worry about you. And there are a lot of conservatives in California, but you're outnumbered, you're outvoiced, and you don't have a representation the way that you need to have. And the direction the government's going, I'd be very, very scared to live in the state of California. I have here the new California laws that kicked in January 1 for the state. And the reason I'm bringing this up is because all of us in the Mid-America region, we're seeing the onset of some of this. We're seeing the beginning of some of this. All of these discussions they're having there are people trying to have that same conversation here. And if they win, there will be no sanctuary to get away from the liberal, left-wing, progressive, nutso mentality. There will be no way to get out of it, whether you're in Kansas, Oklahoma, Texas. Well, I mean, they've tried it in Texas, and good luck with that. But New Mexico, Colorado. We have listeners in Colorado right now from the west side, and many of them, are big believers of what's going on in Colorado with their nice little wannabe socialized healthcare system for the state, for the legalization of marijuana. And yes, we will and can have that conversation today if you'd like to. And some of the things that Colorado's doing, trying to regulate the magazines of firearms, trying to regulate where you can carry the firearms, trying to regulate X, Y, and Z over and over and over and over. It's happening. It's getting closer to us. And for us in the Mid-America region that's trying to get away from that and stay away from that, we should be very concerned. So when we come back after the break, I do have the new California laws that are going to kick in 2018. And I want you to chime in to explain whether these are good or bad, obviously, and what we can do to fight these. What we can do to counter the state of California's new laws they've implemented on their people in the state of California. Because if I lived in California and these came down on me, I would have, look, you have the freedom still to live wherever you want to. And I still try to remind individuals of that when they say they hate the country, they hate the United States. We should apologize to be American. We shouldn't be proud. We don't have American exceptionalism. So I always ask them, where would they like to live? What makes them happy? Because I want you to be happy. And if you're happy in California, then by golly, live in California and live there proudly and say that you're proud of it and that you wouldn't live anywhere else. Good. If that's what makes you happy, all the power to you. I'm not here to dictate on where you live and what kind of lifestyle that you have. I'm saying that that's not the kind of lifestyle that I want in any way, shape, or form. And if that tries to bleed into where I live here, I'm going to be very upset. And that's what we need to be careful of. Got some callers on the line. Stay here. As soon as we come back from this hard break, we'll get to you. Also, the new laws in California for the 2018 year. What have they done to themselves? And what will it do to the rest of the country? Happy Friday to you. This is The Voice of Reason. Stay here.
You're listening to the Voice of Reason on the Mid-America Network.
Good morning to you. Welcome into the Voice of Reason. Happy Friday to you. It's a free-for-all Friday. Whatever's on your mind, we'd love to hear from you. Just looking at, not only are we talking about the new laws in California, but the signs and the pictures and the discussion happening on social media about the sanctuary state that California is in now, trying to fend off the federal government and immigration individuals from the state, doing whatever they want to do, trying to defend dreamers. I would say the best response to it is just say cut off their funding. Federal funding going away. If you're not going to abide by our wishes, if you're not going to abide by the federal government, then you're not going to get our funding. And some say, Andy, that's just an abuse of power. That no, because we want to be self-dependent anyways, don't we? Kansas needs to be self-dependent with very little federal grant money coming in, right? We should be more independent on ourselves, which is why expansion of Medicaid, again, dumb idea. Let's not have federal money coming in because then it can dictate what we can do with our policy. So you know what? Fine, California, you can do whatever you want to do, but you're going to get cut off from funding from the federal government. Oh, yeah, that's right. We tried that, though, and the Democrats stopped it, and even some Republicans tried to stop that because how dare that we cut off funding from a state because, well, then we're just going to kill off all the women and children that are living in the tents and struggling anyways because the state government's really already taking care of them. What do you say? 316-721-8255. Let's go to the phones here, shall we? Good morning. What's your name?
This is Jim.
Jim, how are you, sir?
I'm alive and well.
That's a good day, then.
Yeah, it's not a bad day. The state of California has been, open to all kinds of things for about 40, 50 years.
Sure.
And they have been exporting people to Colorado. And when they get to Colorado, they say they want all of the same services that they had in California.
Mm-hmm.
And Colorado has turned into a mini California. There's a company that it was in Colorado called Magpul. They manufactured magazines for guns and things.
Sure.
And the state of Colorado passed a law against possession of the magazines that hold more than 15 rounds of ammunition. And this company made magazines smaller and larger, and they told the state of Colorado that if they passed that law, they would leave and take all the jobs with them.
Absolutely.
The state passed a law, and then Magpul moved to Wyoming.
Yeah. No, absolutely.
Now, the problem we have is this. The population of Kansas, Wyoming, Nebraska and stuff is so low that it's quite possible for a place like California to flood people in and take over, and particularly if they are using illegal people, which is why Chris Kobach is so important that we have identification. You were talking the other morning about the real ID on driver's licenses. Well, that's important. to know that people are actually citizens or not. And the idea that we have to have an ID, we don't have to by law. We can't be required to have an ID. But on the other hand, we're not Nazi Germany. Show us your papers. And I'd just as soon to see anybody wanting to go vote or register for school or to get taxpayer-supported whatever, show that they're entitled to it.
No, you're absolutely right. And I mean, with the IDs, again, I mean, I'm not against having an ID in any way, shape, or form, because we absolutely do need to have that to prove that we are, like you mentioned, a citizen, and we're an abiding citizen, and we actually follow the rules. That's what we need to do. My concern then was the fact that we want to go through all this rigorous stuff to be able to have that little star on the driver's license to be able to fly and do normal things, but at the same time, we're not doing that same procedure in order to vote when we come to actually registering to vote. So, Jim, I appreciate that. About ready to take a break, but it's a good point, and you're absolutely right. The big concern is that when we allow the sanctuary state from the state of California to allow everybody to flood in these dreamers and illegals and this and that and the other, then they're going to spread out. They're not going to stay there. It's like the refugee coming into the country that goes to one state, is assigned to go to one state, and then they end up leaving because we have a really, really bad tracking system in order to track where they're going and what they're actually doing. And it makes sense, doesn't it? The correlation between the two, it really does make sense. That's why they're okay with having the illegal immigrants there. That's why they're okay with having the refugees from certain areas. Look, and we're not against refugees. We're against the refugees that are coming here under the false narrative of being a refugee in order to harm the country, and we want to do some additional vetting. But it makes sense that they come here, individuals come here, dreamers and whoever, I mean, different societies, different cultures, they come here, and some of them want to come and create the same environment of which they came from rather than assimilate into our society. California is doing the exact same thing. And you're absolutely right, Jim, they left California to go to Colorado and then tried to start the exact same thing with the legalization of marijuana and with the socialized healthcare and with the more progressive idea. I mean, just look at Boulder, look at Manitou Springs out of Colorado Springs, look at some of these areas. It is the epitome of the progressive Californian that came to Colorado to change it. Go up to the ski resorts during the wintertime. I love snowboarding, I love skiing, but the majority of the individuals up there are the surfer bums from California. They surf in the summertime, ski in the wintertime, and they get the best of both worlds, and they're wanting the same type of lifestyle and environment that they came from in California. It's a virus. It's spreading. And we need to be very cautious of that if we allow California to allow these people in, where they're going to go from there. I say we build a fence around California.
It's time for Reason.
If this is a victory for Democrats thinking they have the momentum again, then let them have it, because that's as far as they're going to go. In a state that was already won by Democrats, already predominantly blue, in a state where the Republican did not want to embrace current Republican trends. If you're not going to do that, then you're not going to win. End of story. It's very simple.
This is the Voice of Reason with Andy Hoosier.
Welcome back into the Voice of Reason right here on the Mid-America Network. Appreciate you hanging out with us today. It's an honor to have you along on a Friday, a free-for-all Friday. Whatever's on your mind, troubling you, bothering you, I want to hear from you. We got a lot to get to today. 316-721-8255, 316-721-TALK. I was going to play, maybe we'll do it on Monday. I was going to play the interview we had yesterday with State Representative John Whitmer. But we still got a lot to get to, and we had some callers on the line trying to hang out over the bottom of the hour break. If you want to call back in, you're more than welcome to do so. But let's get into this. We'll play that interview on Monday to kick off next week. New California laws to know in 2018. If you travel to California, if you live in California, if you go anywhere near California, then you need to be concerned about these types of laws. Again, if you live there and that makes you happy, all the power to you. You still need to follow the laws, federal law, constitutional law. You still need to abide by and respect the other states around you. You cannot be the nice little sovereign state of saying we're going to allow dreamers and illegal immigrants and refugees and X, Y, and Z, and we're going to allow everybody here. And if you're a criminal, then that's okay. We're not going to punish you, which, by the way, a lot of these laws actually decriminalize a lot of things, not just something like marijuana, but other things as well. And if you believe in a lot of that, then you're first off breaking the law. Second off, it's going to bleed into other states, and therefore you are not respecting the laws or the values of the other states around you. But again, that's the liberal progressive mentality of them just not caring, because everybody, according to them, should still view and believe the same way that they do. So if California is doing something, that everybody should be doing that, or else they're just going to cut us off and try and be meanie heads to us. Hence what they did with us in the state of Kansas. You don't like the LGBT community, which I don't know where they got that, but you don't like them. So therefore, we're going to cut off any type of state-funded traveling to the state of Kansas. And I say, okay, that's great. We don't want you here anyway, so who really cares? 316-721-8255, 316-721-TALK. Let's go to the phone, shall we? Good morning. What's your name?
Scott.
Scott, how are you, sir?
Well, I'm trying to make sure I understand something you had said earlier in the week,
Okay.
and last couple of weeks. Because before, you were telling people happy or Merry Christmas.
Sure.
And then later, you were saying you supported the police and military. And I said, well, wait a minute now. Now, Christmas is a celebration about someone who was convicted of a crime. So I confused. Well, how can you?
Really, Scott? Really? Hold on. Wait. No, Mr. Hold Button. Now I got to talk over me. Really, you're really going to go there saying that Christmas is the celebration of someone who's convicted of a crime, but then I support law enforcement and the military. Scott, I don't know if you're aware or not, but we don't persecute people and hang them up on crosses like people did back in the day. Back in the day, punishments are a lot harsher. If you went and you stole a loaf of bread out of a store, if you stole something, you got your hand chopped off. We don't do that anymore, do we, Scott?
Well, we shoot people without a trial, though, don't we?
Come on.
At least Jesus was convicted and tried. He was not just killed on the street.
He was convicted and tried in the middle. Wait. He was convicted and tried in the middle of the night without an actual jury. He was convicted by one person that said, you know what, let's get rid of him. It was the middle of the night. It wasn't even a legit case.
It was a magistrate.
Yeah, it was a magistrate in the middle of the night that didn't want the other magistrates to have a say in the hearing.
Well, they all saw him when he got his punishment in the daytime. He wasn't punished at night. He was punished in the daytime.
Well, that's very true, but he got convicted in the middle of the night. It doesn't matter. We're comparing. Hold on. We're comparing apples and oranges here, are we not, Scott? That individual, the reason that we actually had the holiday for Christmas is because that individual was a little more important because he kind of, set things straight for the rest of us, if you believe in that sort of thing, which I do. Now, I'm not saying I'm devaluing anybody else's lives today, but come on. I mean, someone that to the police, which have they made mistakes? Sure, they've made mistakes. They've made some issues, and I'm not trying to cover up or protect them for mishaps that they may or may not have. But come on, I mean that's a little absurd comparison, ain't it?
Yeah, well, injustice for some is injustice for all.
Sure, justice for all, absolutely. And we want to see justice for all. And when we see injustices, we want to fight them. At the same time, though, we have to give respect to military and law enforcement because they're the ones that keep the rule of law. Have they made mistakes and are they perfect? No, it's a human entity. It's a human body. It's a human spirit. Humans make mistakes regardless of whether you wear a uniform or not. That's the reason that we're human and we're not machines. And we have a conscience and we have our own decision making that we can have. And humans, regardless of whether you wear a uniform or not, make mistakes. That doesn't mean that we can't try to correct those mistakes and then move forward to make our community better. But law enforcement itself keeps the rule of law. They're the ones that when someone breaks the law, we try and tell them how not to break the law anymore because that person obviously didn't know how to live in the norm of society.
Well, for somebody just opening up their door and finding out what's going on and getting killed with being unarmed, that person who shot them, the policeman, apparently didn't get enough training, even though he had 7 years. He apparently didn't get enough training how to see that someone was disarmed or didn't have any arms. So I'm kind of questioning of him. But at least you admitted that they made a mistake, which is better than you used to do.
I've always said that if someone makes a mistake, we're going to call them out on it. And again, I'm still waiting to see the reports on the justification of what they tried to do, or whether it was just a reactionary. Oh man, I panicked a little bit and I ended up firing. But I think we're missing again a large piece of the discussion too on what are we going to do with the individuals that are doing this, whatever it's called, the swatting of trying to call in false reports. He should be tried. Honestly, that person should be tried for murder, because they wanted to cause a joke. It led to someone's death, and they should be hanging out hanging out to dry for this. We should be going after those individuals just as much, shouldn't we?
Well, I say whoever did the killing, whoever killed the person, should be on trial first, because murder involving killing somebody unjustifiably, and certainly this man was killed unjustifiably.
Let me ask you this, Scott.
Police.
Hold on,
he was not killed by a phone.
Okay,
a phone can't kill you.
Scott, let me ask you this: do you own a firearm for personal protection?
I'm not going to say.
Okay, that's fine. Let's say you do, and just out of theoretical sense here, you own a firearm for personal protection, and you go to training, and you go to the shooting range to keep it, to practice and to make sure you feel comfortable with the firearm, and you go to different. That's right, and you go to different. Go to different classes on emergency situations, or different scenarios, or different active shooting situations, whatever the case is. Because that's as being a responsible gun owner, as myself and other people are, that's usually what most people do, and law enforcement do the same thing as well. Can you ever truly, honestly be prepared for a situation that arises in the blink of an eye and shots are fired, or you're preparing for shots to be fired and something distracts you off to the side, you see a movement out of the corner of your eye? Can you honestly, whether you're law enforcement or whether you're just a Joe Schmo on the street that has protected himself and trained himself to that degree, do you always know how to handle the situation perfectly and can go into any situation, in a life or death situation, and have the perfect response every single time? Can you do that, Scott? Do you feel comfortable in order doing that?
In this particular case, the police were the one that initiated.
No. They initiated. Hold on, Mr. Hold Button, Scott. I love the conversation. I love being able to dialogue with you here. But in this situation, regardless of whether you're law enforcement or you're just an individual in the public that protects yourself, can you always be 100% every single time in the right when there's an active shooter, or the potential active shooter, or the threat of an active shooter? And can you always respond 100% the proper way without making any mistakes ever? Can you do that, Scott? Do you feel comfortable enough doing that?
Ask me a second question.
That's the same question I just asked you. So can you do that? Can you do that?
Okay, the first question, I say they initiated. The second question is obviously a no.
Okay. So therefore, you can be prepared as much as you possibly can be, but you know that there's always that potential to have something distract you, for you to get to be panicked, for you to make the wrong decision throughout the discussion or throughout the event, and you may regret that. So in that situation, can we always, if law enforcement makes a mistake, then can we always honestly go after them with the?
What does the law say? The law say that you can make a mistake and not go to jail on killing somebody who didn't have a gun or anything?
Well, the law says that you should at least own up to the mistake, but also we need to look at the situation on whether it was a intended mistake or whether it was a mistake because they may not have been trained. Maybe they got panicked. Maybe something happened. And can we honestly blame someone for that and go after them the same degree as if they intentionally wanted to harm somebody?
I don't feel safe on the street with that guy going around with his itchy finger. Because this guy, he's too quick to shoot somebody.
Well, that's the same argument that a lot of people make with individuals that are private gun owners who want to carry a concealed carry around the public because they don't feel comfortable thinking that they're going to make the wrong decision. And it's unfortunate because we can do as much training as we possibly can, but unless you're in that situation, I don't know if we can make the proper judgment. Scott, I love it. I appreciate it. I want to get to another phone call here before the break, but I have a hard time just judging someone based on one action. You can prepare yourself for a situation. All you can't. Now, should they obviously have some type of repercussion if they did something wrong? Yes, they should, obviously. But should we come out then with the teeth baring and the foaming at the mouth, ready to go after them and say we're not comfortable because they made one mistake? I don't know if we can. There's a big difference between intending to harm somebody because that's what they're out to do, and the reactionary that what may happen in a situation that no one can prepare themselves for. I don't know if I can come after someone like that. But Scott, I really appreciate it. It's an interesting conversation. I love having it with you. And I know you're very passionate about it. And I do love the fact that you're very passionate about that situation and about that scenario and about the things that happen to make law enforcement better, to hold law enforcement accountable for what they do, for making our community a better place. So I do respect you very much for that and the conversation that we have in that situation. Very much so. Got to take a break. Got a caller on the line. Stay here. We'll get to you as soon as we come back. Also, when we come back, we'll check in with the Inman Harvest Cafe because remember, it's not just a free-for-all. It's not just a Friday, but it's also Fried Chicken Friday, and we got to check in with them this morning as well. So lots coming up. Don't go anywhere. Great conversations. We'll continue to have them. It's a free-for-all Friday. Whatever's on your mind, this is The Voice of Reason on KQAM. Stay here.
The Voice of Reason with Andy Hoosier.
Welcome back into the Voice of Reason, wrapping up hour number 1 right here on the Mid-America Network. Appreciate you hanging out with us today. 316-721-8255, 316-721-TALK. A very passionate discussion with Scott, which I do love. And again, I love the fact that you are very passionate on the issue and wanting to do what's best for the community. I love that. This portion of the Voice of Reason, as it always is on a Friday, brought to you by the Inman Harvest Cafe, 112 South Main Street in downtown Inman. It's not just Friday, it's not just the free-for-all Friday, but it is the Fried Chicken Friday. Great chicken, fresh homemade breading. You got the buffets today from 11 to 1. You got the big buffet from 5 to 8 o'clock tonight. You got your free slice of pie with the buffet tonight and all the great stuff that goes along with it. Katie's on the line with us this morning. Katie, how are you today?
Good morning, Andy. Happy Fried Chicken Friday.
Happy Fried Chicken Friday.
Yay!
You guys have more fun every single week, and now that the holidays are over, that does not mean the celebration does not stop at the end of 2018 because you guys are just rolling right along with Fried Chicken Friday.
Well, we should celebrate every end of the week as a success because, yay, we made it through another work week, and who wants to cook a big meal after you've especially people like you who get up at, 3?
About 4. Yeah, right at 4 o'clock. That's not my most favorite time of the day.
Right? Yeah. So when you're done, you just want to relax and not have to worry about what you're going to eat for dinner. So that's why we plan it, we buy it, we fix it, we clean it up.
See, it's a wonderful thing.
Yeah,
it's a wonderful thing. Well, you got the big buffet today from 11 to 1, which I know is always a huge hit because lunchtime is perfect to just gorge yourself on a Friday and just enjoy and eat as much as you possibly can because it's so good. But then also, you have your big buffet tonight from 5 to 8 o'clock. It is all you can eat. You have your free slice of pie. You have your fried chicken and then all the other great amenities that go along with it.
That's right. We're having okay, today we're having a corned beef casserole with sauerkraut, and so it'll be kind of like a Reuben casserole.
There you go.
Yeah. Then we're also going to have scallop potatoes. It's going to be a baked scallop potato with ham, so it'll have some cheese, it'll have ham, maybe some bacon bits on top, so we'll have that. And then we'll have one other item that I'm just really not sure what we're going to have yet because it's super early in the morning still.
But you know what? It's going to be a surprise. It can be the surprise selection, and everybody knows that it's already good. So when you get there, then you can be surprised with whatever it is.
That's right. It's going to be awesome no matter what it is. So because everything we do here is from scratch. and actually really, really made with love. So it's not going to matter what it is. It's going to be great.
It's going to be wonderful. I cannot wait. The Inman Harvest Cafe. I love coming up there. The couple of times I was able to come up and see you guys and have some lunch and dinner with you guys. It is so good. I recommend it to everybody, no matter where you're at. It's totally worth the drive to go and see, even if you're in the Wichita area here. Take a break from the day. Get up there. It's Inman Harvest Cafe, 112 South Main Street, downtown Inman. It's their Big Fried Chicken Friday, 620-585-6925. And you can visit them online at the InmanHarvestCafe.com. Katie, we love it. You guys get ready. We'll check in with you here in a couple hours.
Okay, we'll know what we're having by then.
Hey, very good. Well, you guys wake up and have some coffee there. It'll be they're ready to go for another fun Friday.
All right, we'll talk to you soon.
There we go. Appreciate it, Katie, there with the Inman Harvest Cafe. Proud sponsors here on The Voice Reason. We appreciate that very, very much. I've had them on hold for the last break, and I apologize for that. Waiting for so long, but let's go right to the phones here. Good morning. What's your name?
This is Jim.
Jim, how are you, sir?
Oh, doing good. I wanted to correct some things that Scott said a little bit. A private citizen, you, me, anybody else who is legally carrying a firearm for self-defense has to follow the laws on use of force. A police officer has to follow those same laws, but the difference is you will only use your gun in defense when you are attacked.
Sure. Totally different scenario.
You're being attacked. A police officer is sent to a place that's been reported. And in this case, this caller from California called in. So did 911 check the caller ID? Was it spoofed? Did they know it was a call from California?
Well, probably not, because I think it was online from the gaming, because they go onto these online game sites and then they can call and make phone calls with all this technology. And yeah, so that way it's hard to monitor and hard to see. So, and that's the reason. I mean, if they go in with bad intentions, and Jim, I appreciate it. If they go in with bad intentions, then absolutely, let's start figuring out why they want to harm somebody with that intent. If they're going in, you're going into a war zone. If you're getting a phone call like that people are being held hostage, they've already killed somebody, they got a gun, they're extremely dangerous, they may be on drugs. If your mind's altered, you have no idea what the response is going to be. And if you're on edge like that, you're going to be a little panicky, and you may, make a rash decision. I'm not justifying it, but at least let's try and figure out what's really happening in the situation before we come to judge, shall we? Top of the hour news. Speak.
It's time for Reason.
But politics has been changing dramatically because more and more people have disengaged themselves and turned themselves away from the federal politics because they don't feel they can do anything. If you notice media is changing dramatically. You're not following the mainstream anymore. You get a voice. What are we going to do with our tax rates? What are we going to do with our budget at the state level? We get to not only have the voice, but we get to do something about it.
This is the Voice of Reason with Andy Hoosier.
Good morning to you. Welcome into the Voice of Reason right here on the Big Talker, 1480 on the AM side, 102.5 on the FM side, KQAM. The day you've been looking forward to. It is a Friday. Not only is it a Friday, but a free-for-all Friday. Anything on your mind, bothering you, troubling you, don't worry. We can work through it or debate about it together. Let's make it a free-for-all. Let's do it. All right. 721-8255-721-TALK. If you want to join into the program, I'd love to hear from you today. Whatever's on your mind, anything. It's an open line to you. I want to hear from you. Coming up in hour number 3, we do have State Representative Chuck Weber coming on the show. But other than that, which I am excited about, I'm really excited about the state legislators who are getting set up for the kickoff of the legislative session 2018. But this entire hour, it's up to you. Anything you want to talk about that we've covered, not covered. A lot of things federally we have not touched on, nor have I necessarily wanted to touch on this week. But if it is something that's just itching at you to get out, then you're more than welcome to chat about it on the show right now. 721-8255-721-TALK. Shoot me a message, by the way, all over social media, on Facebook on the Voice of Reason page, KQAM page, Twitter at Hoosier Reason, the Facebook live feed that a lot of people checking out today. Good morning to you. We love you and appreciate very much you doing so. And let's move forward with this. The one thing I've not wanted to touch on, I've not wanted to talk about really, because we talked about it so much for so long, every week, and it's just something I didn't want to do. But now that it's back into the mainstream and into the current events, it's something we can bring up again. And I am still apparently in the minority on this, and that's okay. So I want to open up the lines to anybody who disagrees with me on this, which I know is a lot of people. But the latest news is that the Attorney General, Jeff Sessions, is starting to crack down on the marijuana possession throughout the states. And the Obama administration had been discouraging the prosecutors to go after states and go after individuals with marijuana and just kind of let it be. The law is on the books still that it is, according to the CDC, still a class 1 narcotic. It is still a bad drug, and it is still illegal at the federal level. Now, we do have something called states' rights, and this hour we can talk about the constitutionality of all of these laws. But we do have states' rights in the 10th Amendment to default a lot of these decisions to the states, which I support and which I believe in. And a lot of states want to try and expand that power. I find it ironic that that's the stand that they want to take. That's the issue that they want to try and make a big deal out of the 10th Amendment on. It's not guns. It's not the abuse of power when it comes to taxation. It's not the social program spending and the government's ability to manipulate these states based on the federal grants that come in here. It's not a lot of the other abuses of the power, but it's the pot. We're going to smoke marijuana and no one's going to tell us that we can't. In California, one of the new laws that we didn't get to last hour that I wanted to was the new laws coming up in California. One of them now legalizing the use of recreational marijuana. It's already been legal for medical marijuana, but for the legal use of recreational marijuana, now it's become illegal now it's become legal in the state of California. It's been legal in the state of Colorado. Other states are starting to legalize it, both on the medicinal front and on the recreational front. So the question I pose to you is, do you support the recreational legalization of marijuana in the state of Kansas? Every time I bring this up, I've always been in the minority for whatever reason, against even conservative Republicans on this issue. And I think that there is a misunderstanding of wanting the federal government to enforce such a thing as opposed to the states enforcing such a law. And a lot of people just say, just keep your hands off it and just let me do whatever I want to, which I find extremely dangerous and extremely irresponsible. Now, the states that should be the one enforcing said issue instead of the federal government. The fact that Jeff Sessions is doing it, now the story is, according to the Daily Beast, is that Republicans on the majority front are now backing the pro-marijuana argument in trying to stop Jeff Sessions from enforcing it at the federal level. It's a situation that I never thought that I would see happen. It is a circumstance in which I've never really thought would be the case, where that Jeff Sessions, which predominantly in his political career was for the most part a solid conservative. And I've been somewhat of a supporter of Jeff Sessions, not really some of the best decisions he's made as Attorney General, but when he was a senator, I thought he was fantastic. But now, Republicans to Jeff Sessions, get your hands off our weed. Attorney General Jeff Sessions has pulled off something that never would have been unthinkable just a few years back. He managed to rally Republican lawmakers behind marijuana. Should we be enforcing it at the state level, at the federal level? Is this an abuse of the power of the federal government? And where should we go with this situation across the country? More states than not have still not gotten on board with the legalization of medical and or recreational. The few that have, I've seen the disaster that's happened. Some other people say that they've also seen the positives of it, which I'm curious to hear about as well. If we're going to put a cap this, and if we're going to start enforcing it again and start putting a damper on this, do you think that the cat's out of the box and it's already too late, or is there still an opportunity to begin to enforce it and start to shut it down? Now, the economy did very, very well to some degree in the state of Colorado when they legalized it recreationally, and a lot of people talk about how much money comes in for the revenue for the state, which I question as conservatives: do we want the state government to have more money? Do we want them to have a whole nother industry of revenue to be able to come in and spend on whatever they want to? They're still $250 to $300 million in a budget shortfall, the same way we really are, because they didn't spend it wisely. They didn't invest it. They didn't put it back. They actually just expanded the government. They expanded agencies. They expanded their regulations. They expanded the way that socialists like to do with their big spending. And now they're in the same boat as everybody else with running into debt and trying to figure out how to maintain that streamline of revenue for the state. And that's what they've come across. When we give the government a whole nother industry to regulate at the federal level or at the state level, they get more money. They're happy about getting more money. They become dependent on that money. And then if the industry ever dips or goes away or changes, then they panic because now they've lost their entire revenue stream. The state of Colorado have received massive amounts of money from the marijuana industry because they tax it at like a 300% rate from what it's worth. They tax that ungodly amounts. So when you buy an ounce or a gram or whatever you end up wanting to buy of marijuana in Colorado, you are funding the government very heavily. If other states begin to legalize this, the bubble in Colorado will burst, because they cannot inflate prices the way that they have done so, because they're the exclusive place for you to go get it, so therefore they can jack it up to whatever they want to. Colorado has had the monopoly. I know Washington's done it, and California's tried to do it, and it's been there for years. I'm not saying that. But to go into a store and buy it the way that they have in Colorado, they're really kind of exclusive on how they've done it. And because of that, the state has run a monopoly on the entire industry. If the rest of the country legalizes this, the industry that Colorado has created for their revenue stream, that bubble will burst. That industry will collapse. That entire economy in the state of Colorado will crumble. And they will be left with massive amounts of debt. They will have to get massive amounts. They will turn into the next Illinois with trying to figure out how to bail out the state for revenue, because they cannot charge the prices that they were charging before if everybody begins to do this. That's the first fault on the state of Colorado. Second off, we can talk about how it affects the community, how it affects the homeless rate tripled in Colorado, in the Denver area. We've talked about this ad nauseum. So the question I have is it too late to put the cap on it and begin to reinforce it? If they start coming in and saying, yeah, states, I know that you like Colorado and like California and like Oregon. I honestly think the only reason California legalized it now was because now the Republicans are in charge and actually want to try to enforce it. And that's their other way to spite Donald Trump. Now the time, we better get on board with this now, because now not only are we going to defend them from dreamers and the illegals and the refugees and the carbon issue and the environment and whatever else we're going to try and change, and we're going to stand and we're going to be different from everybody else, but now we're also going to legalize marijuana because Jeff Sessions wants to enforce it. Is it too late? Or can they come back in now and say, yeah, you know what, you tried to do it, but it's still illegal federally, so Supremacy Clause, Article 6, we're going to come in, we're going to enforce it, and you need to start repealing this. How many businesses would that close in Colorado? A lot. How many businesses would it close in Oregon? In Washington? A lot. How many businesses would already close in California? A lot. In any other state that's trying to do this. It would have some damage on these states. But in my opinion, if we legalize it across the board in every state, because every state feels like it's a good idea, it's going to damage them anyway. So either way, it was a bad idea from the start, in my humble opinion, because no matter whether you legalize it across the board everywhere or you start enforcing it and you shut them down, either way, there's going to be a hit on the economies for the states that felt like trying to go down this experiment. And let's be clear, this is more of an experiment than the Kansas experiment with our tax rates. Just to be clear on that. So is it too far gone, or should we be enforcing? That's the question I have for you in this hour. 721-8255, 721-TALK. It is interesting that many Republicans now starting to shy away from Jeff Sessions and starting to support the states that are allowing the legalization of marijuana recreationally and medicinally. And I don't want to talk about the benefits of the medical, because we see the benefits. I see it. I know it. I know we've heard that ad nauseum on this show, actually in this slot and daytime and hour for weeks on end. And I don't want to go down that front. But the political side of this, is it too far gone to try and go back and try and reinforce it again? Or is it too far gone to where we have to start legalizing it elsewhere to start bursting the bubble in the industries that have held a monopoly on it for so long? Your thoughts and calls on that, I want to hear from you. 721-8255, 721-TALK. This is The Voice of Reason on KQAM. Stay here.
The Voice of Reason with Andy Hoosier on the Big Talker KQAM.
Welcome back into the Voice of Reason right here on the Big Talker KQAM. Welcome aboard on a Friday, on a free-for-all Friday. We'd love to hear from you today as we're wrapping up your first week of 2018. Can you believe it? Kind of a short week, but, hey, it's still been a crazy week trying to wrap up fourth quarter 2017 and seeing the vision of a brand new year. This is the Voice of Reason, your fastest-growing radio show in the entire state of Kansas. Good morning and welcome aboard. Let's go to the phones here, shall we? Good morning. What's your name?
Good morning, Andy. It's Ron.
Ron, how are you, my friend?
I'm doing great.
Good.
On this issue of marijuana, my put is that, when a doctor prescribes a medication, okay, there comes this is what will happen to you, if you overdose yourself or these are the things you shouldn't do while taking this medication, like one, driving or doing something that's hazardous and things like that. Well, my understanding of marijuana, it puts you into kind of a euphoria of you're relaxed and so you're really not in control of your faculties completely. So why would I want someone out there on my highway driving around? Now, if there was assurance that they could not get in a vehicle and drive, just like you're not supposed to do when you take medicine that says don't drive while taking this, one of the things is don't drive while taking this medicine.
Sure.
That would be fine if they do it in their home and not be out on the road and because a vehicle is a weapon, can be a weapon,
Well, and
it kills people.
And it's a great question. And I mean, we're not supposed to drink and drive either. And like in California, the law, now that they have legalized the recreational use of marijuana, they say, but it will be illegal to smoke and drive under the bill that takes effect January 1 that outlaws smoking and ingesting marijuana, just as it is already unlawful for drivers to drink and drive. The problem is, though, it's harder to regulate like alcohol because when do the side effects wear off enough for you to feel comfortable to drive? Or do you have that false narrative of, I'm fine, I'm going to be able to drive? Or how long is it going to be in your system? Or even if you get pulled over, and this is the problem that law enforcement's had in Colorado, and I've talked to many sheriffs in Colorado about this, is if you have it in your system because you're a habitual user and you use it frequently, if you may not be feeling the effects personally, but yet you get tested for it and you have high amounts of THC in your system, how do you regulate something like this? And we did, on New Year's, we did the DUI awareness to where, we can feel the effects opposed to the level that we're supposed to be at, the 0.08 for alcohol content. And yeah, most of us said we didn't even get close to the 0.08, but at the same time, we felt the effects enough to where we knew we wouldn't be able to drive. Pot smokers, because they're relaxed and they're calm in that sense, they have that feeling that they're okay, and because they use it so frequently that it doesn't hit them as much, so either they need to take more of it in order to get the effect, or they take the same amount and they have that amount in their system, but they feel fine, but then they overpeak the level. You can't, and then depending on, of course, body weight and body fat and how much you use it, and you can't regulate something like marijuana like you can regulate some of the other substances.
Yeah, like I said, there's just so many problems, especially like we're butted up against a state over here in Colorado that it spills over into our state. Mm-hmm. Now we've got people from there possibly going through our state that isn't impaired.
Sure.
And it puts our citizens in danger, of an accident that they don't cause.
Sure. No, I'm with you. And I mean, accidents related to marijuana on the roads have spiked dramatically in the state of Colorado because law enforcement has no way to really enforce it. And we've seen massive amounts of accidents happen in Colorado because people were impaired with that. Now, if you want to look at it from the constitutional sense, I totally understand the people that say that we shouldn't regulate it at the federal level because the federal government doesn't have really a place to have a say in some of this, which I can see yes and no. I mean, we have the CDC, so we have other narcotics illegal as well, so we should just apparently legalize all drugs across the board, which I'm not a fan of. But I think I do agree in the sense that it should be up to the states, because the states have that right over the federal government. But the states, in my opinion, should make the right choice by not legalizing it based on state policy, not by federal policy.
Well, the thing of it is that there should be some accountability from these states that do decide they want to do that, when it comes to when the border states around them that do not want that.
Yeah, they got to have some kind of say in there. You can't just say it all by yourself and say, heck with you guys around us, our neighboring states that, we have family members of that go and travel back and forth around the states and that travel through us. And heck with you guys, we don't care what you have to say. We're just going to do our own thing. And if it affects you, then, oh, well, it's not our problem. I mean, we can't go into it with that mindset.
Yeah. Hey, thanks, Andy, for all you do, and have a good weekend.
Ron, I appreciate the call, my friend. Always a pleasure. 728-255-7210-TALK. I know a lot of people disagree with me on this, and I'm opening up the lines to you if you do want to challenge me and if you want to have that discussion, because now's the time to do it. I don't like to talk about this as much because we've talked about it too much in the past, I think. But now's the opportunity to have this conversation if you want to, and get your takes on it. Now we had a caller yesterday or a couple of days ago that mentioned about the agricultural hemp, and that to me is a totally different situation, totally different circumstance, and I am in favor of the agricultural hemp because it has no THC in it. You can't smoke it, you can't get high off it, and you can grow it, and then you can use it for whatever you want to for a whole nother industry. So I do see the benefits of that, but when it comes to the actual THC leveled stuff, then I'm not in favor of the recreational. Now, the medical, like Ron said, okay, you get a prescription for the doctor, you have X amount of time for the antibiotic to wash out of your system and to clean out the infection, and then you go about your business and you're done and you don't take it anymore. I have a really hard time seeing if a lot of the individuals that get prescribed marijuana, that go in and start smoking marijuana, if they say, okay, the doctor prescribed it to me for my glaucoma or for whatever, okay, I take it for an X amount of time and then I'm done. Do you really stop and say, oh, it's back again, I think I need some more. I need to get some more again. Do they really do that? I don't know if they do or not. We'll continue this when we come back. Get your thoughts and calls on this. This is The Voice of Reason on KQAM. Stay here.
When a headline just isn't enough,
Is that all you got?
it's time to wake up the right way.
All right.
This is The Voice of Reason with Andy Hoosier on the Big Talker, 1480 AM and 1025 FM, KQAM.
Welcome back into The Voice of Reason right here on the Big Talker, KQAM. Appreciate you hanging out with us. Happy Friday to you. It's a free-for-all Friday. Whatever's on your mind. Great discussions happening all across the board. And we'd love to hear from you. 728-255-7210-TALK. I want to continue on the conversation of the legalization and or of the recreational, medicinal, whatever, of the marijuana state by state. But we do need to look at, and we got some calls lining up, and I want to take them on that. But first, I want to, regardless of this is a great discussion when it comes to the Constitution as well, along with so many others when it comes to state sovereignty. If you remember, here in the state of Kansas, we had our Second Amendment Protection Act that fell through with the quote-unquote supremacy clause from Article 6, as opposed to the states' rights with the, first off, the Second Amendment, but then with the 10th Amendment when it comes to states' rights. And there's the constitutional debacles that are happening all across the board. And I'm no genius on it by any means. I try to study it when I can. I try to learn as much as I can and understand as much as I can. But there are others, obviously, that are way smarter than myself. And sometimes we need some of that guidance and individuals that love to go around and try and give us some of that information, teaching us the original intent of the Constitution is what we really, really have to do. We have to understand the original context, the original meaning, the original understanding of the Constitution and what our founders intended. And you have an opportunity to do so. Coming up on Tuesday next week, we've been talking about it. We've been giving tickets away. We have a few tickets left. And on Tuesday next week, the Chris Ann Hall Prospering Liberty Tour is happening at Century 2 at the Convention Hall. $11.95 for the ticket. You can get them at WichitaTix.com. WichitaTix.com. And we have one of the biggest fans of Chris Ann Hall, along with the organizer of the event. Geezer's on the line with us. Geezer, good morning, my friend. What's happening?
Well, almost everything. With a little bit of luck, we'll sell some tickets and get some folks out to see Chris Ann and learn a good bit about our Constitution and the effectiveness of it for today's difficulties. You know, one of the things that we're hearing a lot about these days is the Article 5, which is in the Constitution, and it's certainly a constitutional remedy for some things, but it may not be the remedy people expect it to be. I'm sure that Chris Ann will have something to say about it. I find it interesting. I'm often asked if I have told her what subject I want her to address or what it is she's going to say. And I can tell you this: I've seen Chris Ann address audiences live many times. Mm-hmm. I've never been bored once, not even slightly. You would think that it would be incredibly redundant to go over the various things that the founders said and what they thought, but it's oddly enough, it is not. This lady has the most remarkable memory I have ever seen. And I'm convinced, I'm absolutely convinced. I saw her speak one time for an hour and 45 minutes, and she used no notes.
Sure.
She walked away. She's so short that she couldn't hardly see over the podium, so she just walked out from behind the podium and talked to people. And it was remarkable. She's effective. She knows what she's talking about, and she is not giving you her opinion. She is telling us what it is the founders said, what they clearly intended the Constitution to mean. I heard you talking about the marijuana issue, and the one thing that is absolutely certain, the federal government has no position in domestic policy. Federal government was established to do things with foreign governments.
Sure.
That states couldn't do by themselves individually, and it was just more convenient. We hear, even Antonin Scalia suggested live on television once that we had surrendered our certain rights. We didn't surrender right one. What we did was delegate those rights to the federal government. A delegated right is a great deal different than a surrendered right. We didn't give it up and hand it to the federal government. We retain ownership of those rights, period. And the federal government only has them as long as they do just exactly what the Constitution says they have the authority to do.
Oh, sure.
We're making some terrible mistakes letting them extend their power and then letting the Supreme Court define the power of the federal government. Goodness gracious, we've lost our mind.
Well, and I tell you what, we have gone to a day where we don't teach civics, we don't teach the Constitution in class anymore in education. Young kids do not understand. So when we go up to civic issues or social issues like marijuana, or we talk about state sovereignty versus the federal government and the supremacy clause versus the Bill of Rights in the first 10 amendments, when we have the rights as individuals, as protecting our natural rights, God-given rights, whatever you want to call them, when we talk about these things, and then we see some of the issues that come up today, because there is, I mean, you're right. You could talk for days and days and days and days and days about the Constitution, and you could never hit the same thing, because the thought, the deepness that went into crafting our foundational document, our rule of law here, that we have forgotten half of what they wanted us to remember on the reasoning of why they drafted it the way they did. And someone like Chris Ann Hall, who is such an expert and so knowledgeable on something like this, I mean, we have to have that refresher once in a while.
Yes, sir, we do. You know, something that I say as often as I get the chance, and I would say it publicly right now, it is this simple. There are times in life, you know, Winston Churchill, I am absolutely convinced, was both called and chosen by God Almighty himself to lead Britain through the Second World War. He was the First Lord of the Admiralty. He was a Prime Minister. and he was called to that fight. I am completely convinced that Chris Ann Hall is likewise. Now, I don't make a statement like that without biblical authority to do so, and if anybody chooses, I'll be there. I'll be at a table at the Founders Keep table, and I'll be happy to provide the biblical authority. I'm not going to attempt to do it right here, but there is biblical authority for making a statement of that sort.
Sure.
You evaluate the evidence, and I don't believe that I have the authority to make a statement like that lacking biblical authority. But
Sure.
it's there, and it's very simple. This lady is a degreed biochemist. She was a Russian linguist for the DOD. She was 10 years a prosecutor in Florida, and she is a remarkable individual. And she's just as nice as she can possibly be. She is delighted to talk to Democrats, Republicans. It doesn't make any difference. She is absolutely bipartisan. She doesn't take a partisan position. She takes a constitutional position. One of the things we have a tendency to do is think in terms of Republican and Democrat. Well, they're not even government agencies. They're private corporate clubs who have been granted, without authority, they've been granted governmental status. A lot of people seem to think that they're somehow a government agency of some sort. They're not. They're private corporate clubs. Now, you were talking about our school kids. On January 9th in Howard, Kansas, Chris Ann is going to be there at the USD 282 to present to those kids. There's a curriculum change coming there, and it has to do with the teaching concerning the Constitution, the American Revolution, and the social mores of the colonies at the time. She's an absolute expert on it. I can't wait to be. I will be there, and I'm really going to have a good time. I've been there before, and my goodness, what a reception we did get! It's a remarkable thing. At any rate, I'm very excited about it. Please buy a ticket. We're going to live stream this thing, and we hope if we can sell enough tickets, we'll do it. We'll have a professional crew, camera work and the like to live stream this, so it's really done well. But we got to sell tickets, and right now tickets are not sold as much as we need. But you can buy a ticket, stay home, and watch it on your computer screen.
Sure. Well, it's going to be a lot of fun. It's the Chris Ann Hall Prospering Liberty Tour. It's on Tuesday next week. The doors open at 5. Event starts at about 7 o'clock. $11.95. Not that expensive at all. It's going to be at Century 2 in the convention hall. It's going to be great. We got about a minute left here, Geezer, but talk real quickly about the participating sponsors with this, with the Concerned Women of America in Missouri and Founders Keep. Now, I'm part of the Facebook. After you had mentioned this, I joined the Founders Keep Facebook page. What is Founders Keep?
Well, Founders Keep is an organization that specializes. Their primary goal is to distribute constitutional knowledge to school kids. They concentrate their efforts on schools, public schools, Christian schools, private schools, and home schools. And they're working very hard. They've given away several thousand pocket constitutions. They have held classes going over some of the things that there's only one problem with Chris Ann, and that is that she can't clone herself. And there's only one of her, and she can only be somewhere. She can't be everywhere. And 260 some days a year she's crisscrossing this nation, addressing crowds from as little as 10 people to as many as 1,000 or several thousand. She talks to police officers, sheriff's departments, all kinds of people, but she can only be in one place at a time. We're hoping to build a little track record so that people can see what we do, not only to advance the cause of limited government, limited to the constrictions articulated in the Constitution, but what we do with the money. If we're going to return this nation, make it great again, it's going to take some money, and we're going to have to spend that money well. Everything that is done with this endeavor, the distribution of funds will be publicly available to anybody that wants to look. And we're very, very enthused. We're hoping that this little bit of a track record in February of 17, we did a little demonstration at the courthouse when the Shane Cox, Jeremy Kettler trial was set up. 800,000 people saw that. Mm-hmm. Now, how much effect it's had, I don't know for sure. But what I do know is this: the more people that understand that it is we the people in whom all power is vested in these United States, the sooner we understand that, every one of those miscreants that are casting votes to pass laws, they are under our direction. And it's going to be required. If we want better governance, we are going to have to assert ourselves in the interest of gaining it.
That's what it's all about. I'm really excited. The event next week is Chris Ann Hall's Prospering Liberty Tour. Geezer, I'm really excited about the event. I will be out there next Tuesday as well to see this, as you mentioned, getting back to the basics when it comes to the Constitution, when it talks about the importance of state sovereignty, holding our elected officials and the federal government accountable. I think it's needed more now than it ever is. Geezer, I appreciate you joining, my friend.
Hey, thank you.
Bye now. Always a good time right there. There it is, Chris Ann Hall again, WichitaTix.com, WichitaTix.com. If you want to get tickets for it, it's cheap. You can stay at home and stream it, or you can go and experience it live. It's going to be something you're not going to want to miss. This is The Voice of Reason. Stay here.
This is The Voice of Reason with Andy Hoosier.
A lot of messages on social media and some phone calls off the air regarding the marijuana issue. And thanks again to Geezer talking about the Chris Ann Hall Liberty Tour, the Prospering Liberty Tour. It's coming up on Tuesday. You can still get tickets at WichitaTix.com. $11.95. We'll have another pair to give away. Actually, we can do that before the end of the hour right now in just a few minutes here, so stay tuned in for that. But some messages and comment from listener Matt off the air. Andy, people are smoking marijuana for a long time. You're not going to be able to stop it. I'm not talking about stopping it. We got to remind that, in my opinion, it shouldn't be legal to manufacture and make it so public. But we're not knocking on the doors and going into people's basements to try and round them up to try and say, oh, you're smoking marijuana at night. Oh, we need to stop that. We just need to... We don't need to give the government more control over it. And that's the problem that I have with it. When we talk about the Constitution, when we talk about the legalities between the federal government and the state government, yeah, the federal, should they be? Well, to some degree, because it is considered also interstate commerce. If it's traveling across the states over state lines, then yeah, we're going to have an issue that way. We saw the story over Christmas of the, 60, 70, 80-year-old grandparents or great-grandparents that were traveling from California to Vermont, and they got stopped in Nebraska with 60 pounds of marijuana. That's a bit of a problem, is it not? If we just legalize it, then that's not going to be a problem, right? Everybody can just travel with it. They can do what they will with it. We saw the story, about a year ago? And there was the couple of guys that had about 50, 60 pounds of marijuana coming out of Colorado, trying to travel across the country to distribute. And they ended up smoking some and ended up having to pull over to a fast food restaurant and had to call the police because they were so high and so paranoid that they thought every car that was going by them was an undercover cop, and they turned themselves in and said, please just come get us because we're tired of you chasing us and tailing us because you know what's going on, and they ended up turning themselves in. That's what we don't need to see. If you're just doing it in your basement and nobody cares, then I'm not concerned about it. I don't want it in public. I don't want to smell it when I go to the store. I don't want to be working in customer service or you to be working in customer service and have to smell it. I don't want to deal with it. I don't want it around. Not to mention the other outside factors of the, increased automobile accidents and some of the other things that happen along with it. Should it be regulated at the federal level? No, not as much as it is right now. Should it be regulated more at the state level? Yes, but in my opinion, should the states actually allow it? We got about a minute. Let's go to the phones here, shall we? Good morning. What's your name?
Hey, it's Matt.
Hey, Matt. How are you, my friend?
Well, you prompted the call, did you not?
That's right. That's right. What's did I somewhat try to answer your thoughts a little bit there?
I think so. The thing of it is, I'm no spring chicken. I'm a 58-year-old guy. Kind of grew up in the 70s, and there's a lot of people that went to jail then and have gone to jail now that there shouldn't have been any reason for it. I'm not talking, everyone walking around smoking weed in the street or whatever. There have to be laws to because people don't have the good common sense to do what you said, which is stay home or whatever. But
it's sad, isn't it? I mean, if there's too much damn government now. Sure.
And if they're going to throw you in jail for it, when it's, in my estimate, basically harmless, but people need to know what they're getting, just like they do with alcohol.
Sure.
It's 3.2, it's whatever point, so they need to know, and we regulate we have Food and Drug Administration, right? We look at our produce and all that stuff. So I just regulate it, let people do it, stop throwing folks in jail for it. If there's a black market, well, then they get prosecuted for what they're doing on the black market. But
sure.
We tell women, you have the right to do what you want with your body, but you can't smoke weed, you can't do this, you can't do that. So it's a hypocrisy. Are we a basically free nation governed by ourselves? And if we are, well, it seems to me like that's what the folks are looking for. We're looking for a little bit more freedom. If they want to do this stupid thing, there's tons and tons more stuff that's important.
Sure.
But
I see.
Yeah, let's get this out of the way.
I get it, Matt. I agree with you there in that front. I mean, you're right. We do have way too much government, and we shouldn't be punishing people to do it in their basement if they are responsible in that sense, and they don't. It is when they go out into the public or they're busted with it in their car, or that sense when a lot of these criminals, or quote-unquote criminals, according to law enforcement right now, end up getting in there. But I see it, Matt. I totally get it. Hour number 3, The Voice of Reason, coming up here. Stay here.
It's time for Reason.
But politics has been changing dramatically because more and more people have disengaged themselves and turned themselves away from the federal politics because they don't feel they can do anything. If you notice media is changing dramatically. You're not following the mainstream anymore. You get a voice. What are we going to do with our tax rates? What are we going to do with our budget at the state level? We get to not only have the voice, but we get to do something about it.
This is the Voice of Reason with Andy Hoosier.
Then I get on my knees and pray. We don't get fooled again. Don't get fooled again.
Oh man, what a fun day it's been already. Hour number 3 of The Voice of Reason. Welcome into it right here on the Big Talker, 1480 on the AM side, 102.5 on the FM side, KQAM. It is a Friday. We do it every single Friday, but whatever's on your mind, bothering you, troubling you, it's all good. It is a free-for-all Friday. Let's have a little fun with it today. What do you say? Come on. All right. That's what we do. 721-8255-721-TALK. If you want to join into the program, I'd love to hear from you today. What's happening in your neck of the world? That's what we're all about, trying to make our community a better place. Because we are, by the way, the fastest growing radio show in the entire state of Kansas. Let's get into our guests, though, as we've talked about some interesting topics already this show. We'll get into some more here in a little bit, but I'm getting ready to can you imagine? We are 3 days away. I guess it is Friday. Monday being the first day of the legislative session. Tuesday being the State of the State address by, yes, Governor Sam Brownback is going to be giving that address. I don't know why people thought elsewise, but he is going to be giving it. But the session starts off on Monday. We have a session that is going to be very interesting on the tax rates, on education, on Medicaid, on even marijuana, like we talked about last hour, and a lot of issues are going to be brought up. How are we going to go about them? Will we remember the original intent of the Constitution? Will we fall back on our traditional values? And will we go back to our conservative principles in the state? That is the question. And I'm really excited to bring on another legislator. We love having and talking to as many as we can. And a brand new, I don't think he's been on the show yet, from District Number 85. It's State Representative Chuck Weber's on the show with us here. Chuck, good morning to you, my friend.
Good morning, Andy. You are truly the voice of reason, especially after the forum the other night. I think your voice may have been the only voice of reason we heard the other night. But thanks for having me on this morning. Really appreciate it.
Well, it's an honor to have you on here, and thank you for that. I love being able to chat with you. It was a fun delegation a couple nights ago. It was, I mean, I would have liked to have seen more people turn out, but I understand why people don't want to go to it because, boy, I tell you what, they show up in the groves with their really loud, angry voices, and I loved seeing how many loud voices we could get on booze when we actually talked about some common sense issues.
Right. Well, I heard a little bit of your conversation about the marijuana issue, last hour, and I just, the string of topics, it's pretty predictable, really, at certain forums. So, but I would say this, that I really do appreciate, no matter, if we agree or not agree, I appreciate people coming out and people say, I get emails too, I'm mad, I'm angry. And I just respond and say, you know what, me too. I try not to be, I'm a passionate guy. Sure. I try not to bring emotion into my decision making. So I think it's great to be passionate. But we have to make decisions based on, reason, to coin a phrase. And that's what we're doing too little of, I think, in Topeka.
Well, I completely agree. And last year was a huge example of that, to where, we saw the extended special session trying to figure out what to do with the tax rates. And it wasn't even a conversation of, let's try and do a happy blend of trying to trim some spending here while we raise a little tax here and find a happy medium. But it was pretty much, if you want to cut spending, don't even bring it up in the conversation. It's just regardless of what tax rate we're going to raise you to. And to me, that's a troubling situation to be stuck in.
Yeah, I think getting back to this emotion versus reason, I went down to the well. I try not to go down there too often, the well being, that's where we speak in front of the rest of our colleagues. And I just said, it seems to me that our focus has been get the governor. And, there was just a mantra that I heard from some of my colleagues and talk around the Capitol. And so that is not a good place to make decisions from. And I'm not saying Sam Brownback did everything right. He did a lot of things that weren't right.
Sure.
But we can't go after people on a personal level for public policy. It just doesn't work. So, and to your point about spending, I was part of the Truth Caucus. My colleague, Senator Ty Masterson, and I presented what we call the Republican Balanced Budget Plan, and it talked about at least just freezing spending. And the blowback we got from that was incredible. Can we not just freeze spending? We're not even talking about, quote unquote spending cuts. Let's just freeze spending. And so that wasn't even really seriously considered, unfortunately. And what did we end up with? $1.2 billion tax increase over 2 years, $500 million more for schools, and it's still not enough.
Exactly. It's still not enough. You will never please them, never make them happy. Yeah. I'm very frustrated with the negotiation process and everybody talking about let's hold hands, sing kumbaya, and be bipartisan, because the way bipartisanship has worked right now is either you get on the progressive agenda and raise taxes $1.2 billion, or you're not going to be part of the conversation and we'll do it without you. And to me, that is not finding the happy medium between what we want and what they want. And that showed exactly like the example of what happened in the delegation public forum a couple nights ago, was that I made that statement, not that it's about me, but I made the statement, and everybody in the crowd majoritively booed because they didn't want to hear it.
Right. Yep. So, it's and again, I think that crowd at the public forum down. I don't think that's terribly representative, frankly.
Well,
certainly not. I don't think there was anyone from my district there. If there was, they didn't approach me, and normally they would. I think my colleague, Representative Humphreys, had one or two people there. But we get the I don't want to say that the fringes, the extremes. They yell the loudest. They're on the comm boxes on the Wichita Eagle. And it's not a good way to go about gathering public information. I try and engage my constituents one-on-one, by email, by phone calls, reaching out to them, and that's how you get a sense of really what the people out there want.
Exactly. The big issue, obviously, that was at the delegation a couple of nights ago that I know is going to be, other than education, which we'll get to in a second, but is the idea of Medicaid expansion. In your opinion, with what you saw last session, with but also going into a midterm election this year and some trying to play somewhat nice and going back to their constituents to try and get reelected, is this going to be a serious matter, and do they have enough votes to pass it and or even override a governor's veto if it comes to that?
Well, I think they have the votes to pass it, but whether they have the votes to override a governor's veto, whether that be Governor Brownback or Governor Collier, I don't know. I think we have the votes to maintain no Medicaid expansion in Kansas. Andy, I have a little different take on this. Most of my colleagues talk about the cost, which is certainly part of this equation, but I have a son with a disability. Billy's 21 years old. He's on CanCare. He's a Medicaid recipient. And Medicaid, we forget, was originally made and created for people, the elderly, the disabled, the mentally ill, pregnant women, the truly needy in our society who cannot take care of themselves. And so here's an example of Medicaid expansion and why I don't think it's going to work in terms of providers out there. Billy looks for a dentist on CanCare, and in the entire Wichita metropolitan area, there are exactly 2 dentists in the entire metro area that will take CanCare coverage for him. And I'm not talking about extensive dental work. I'm talking about a cleaning and an exam like you and I get, at our regular dentist.
Sure.
So if we unleash, tens of thousands of Kansans onto the system, it's kind of like we wipe our hands clean. Oh, well, we fixed it. We haven't fixed it because we don't have the providers out there who are going to be able to take care of the people. I think in addition to that, Andy, we have health care available to people. In my neighborhood, not too far, about 2 miles away, there's a health core public, it's called an FQHC, a federally qualified health care center. People can go. It's on a basis of you pay, but it's just a fraction. It's on a sliding scale. You can get a comprehensive health care. It's good. And in fact, I take my son to an FQHC, Hunter Health Clinic, for his dental care.
Sure.
And it's good health care. So health care is out there available. You talk about health insurance and health care, and those are 2 different things. So for me, the Medicaid question is simply a fact that I think first of all, it is a welfare benefit. I think secondly, we don't have the providers out there that are going to take care of the people if we unleash Medicaid expansion. And I think thirdly, I think this is important to note, that there is a small percentage. I'm not talking about the able-bodied single men and women who have no dependents who can get out there and work, but I think there is a small percentage of people that we need to try and figure out a way for them. But unleashing this, multi-million-dollar, billion-dollar plan of Medicaid expansion for, one-size-fits-all is not the way to do it.
Oh, exactly. And you hit it right on the head. And I'm so glad you brought it up because we could talk about the finances all day long until we're blue in the face. But the finances part doesn't matter to the progressives. They don't really care. But when it comes to the accessibility, because you're right, we're not talking about killing the programs. That's not what we want. As you mentioned, you have a son that's on Medicaid and on CanCare, and you see the benefits of it. But if we start flooding the market with everybody to go onto the same one, your son and everybody else with a mental disability or with a disability altogether, or the elderly, they're not going to get the proper care because the entire system's completely overwhelmed.
Yeah, it's true. We actually, again, I go back to my own personal experience, and it's not about me, but I use this as an example, and you just extend this out. But we got a notice just last week from Billy's primary care doctor. It said he can no longer take Medicaid patients. And we're like, what? And of course, my wife goes into a tizzy, and well, he kind of got grandfathered in, but some of these clinics I'm talking about primary care now.
Sure.
I'm talking about just a regular checkup now. So now even these physicians and these clinics who are not able to take patients again, or new patients, not again, they're grandfathering, at least at our clinic. So and I think some inconsistency. I got an email. I got pounded pretty hard by a doctor who took care of my kids my other kids, we would call typical, right? Okay. And he was wanting me to expand Medicaid. And I said, "Are you taking Medicaid patients now?" He said, "Well, I can't afford to take Medicaid patients now." And we had this kind of like, "Well, Doc, what? Come on, talk to me here. I mean, how can I push that button to say that we're going to expand Medicaid, and you are asking me to do that, but yet you're not taking the Medicaid patients?" So
right.
I understand. I think that there's a totally legitimate percentage of people out there, and there were actually a couple of cases there at the public forum the other night where there were legitimate cases where it's tough. Let's go to work and do the hard work and the studies and figure out, maybe we can do a high-risk pool out there. Maybe we can do some temporary things on healthcare for folks that, truly need something if they have dependents, especially at home. But this one-size-fits-all, it's not going to work. It doesn't work. And we see that happening in states like Arkansas and Indiana. So anyway, I'm opposed to Medicaid expansion.
I'm so glad to hear that. And I mean, you have it right on. And I mean, maybe we mentioned in the delegation forum a couple of nights ago is that basing policy on emotion is a really bad thing to do. But if they are going to base it on emotion, I mean, you have the emotion right there because you are personally involved with this. And if you want to take care of the children, if you want to take care of the disabled or the elderly, then let's take care of them. But that's not supposed to be the blanket for everybody else, because the ones you're trying to advocate to take care of won't get the care that they actually need. So we got about a minute left here. I want to wrap this up, but I do want to ask you, as we talk about this, your thoughts on, let's say that this does go, because they are going to push on it hard to try and expand Medicaid. Lieutenant Governor Collier, who I am a big fan of, and he is solidly conservative, he created the Can Care project, the privatization of that. Do you think that he would be, if it gets to his desk and he is acting governor at that time, would he sign an expansion because it is his program and he thinks he could do it, or would he try and veto something like that?
Yeah, I can't get inside of Jeff's head. I think he's a good man, and you're right. He did create Can Care. It's an election year, and election years do crazy things to some people. I've talked to some of his people, and I'm not getting a no on the Medicaid veto, so that troubles me a little bit. And I think we all want to try and thread the needle, and I think maybe that's what Lieutenant Governor Collier might be trying to do right now. Look, we're looking for solutions. So that's another way of saying thread the needle. So
sure.
I can't predict what Lieutenant Governor Collier / Governor Collier might do on that. I really can't.
Sure. Well, and regardless of what his decision is, I mean, it could really throw the entire session into some uncertainties on how you guys play your cards from your end and how they play their cards from the governor's end. So it's going to be even though it is a midterm election year and some people try and play nice, it's going to be really, really interesting to see how everybody ends up approaching these situations. It's District 85, State Representative Chuck Weber. I love having you on the program, my friend. God bless you with what you guys do up there. Keep up the fight. I know you seem like you're in the minority, but you have a lot of support back here on the home front. We got to keep making our voice heard. So I appreciate what you do, my friend.
Thanks, Andy. And I'm going to have an editorial in the Sunday paper this week opposite of Jim Ward. So I'm not a big Eagle guy, but look for my editorial this Sunday in the Wichita Eagle.
I love it. We'll read that on the air on Monday. I appreciate that. We'll get you back on the show again soon, Chuck. I appreciate it.
Thank you, sir.
Very good. Open up lines to you when we come back here. 721-825-572 and talk. That was State Representative Chuck Weber. This is The Voice of Reason on KQAM. Stay here.
The Voice of Reason with Andy Hoosier on the Big Talker, KQAM.
I do have to laugh. Welcome back into the Voice of Reason. Thanks again to State Representative Chuck Weber coming on the show. Great information. Absolutely wonderful guy. Appreciate him joining and fighting the good fight that he needs to, and so many others do up in Topeka. I do have to laugh. The delegation that happened a couple of nights ago we were talking about, I was listening to some of the other comments from the other advocates for the Medicaid expansion, and one of them was a young kid, a millennial, who just made the comment of trying to raise a family, trying to take care of a family, and how we need Medicaid expansion because health insurance is really expensive and how life is just really hard. Life is just really tough. It's really, really tough out there. Welcome to the real world, ladies and gentlemen. 721-825-572 and talk. Let's go to the phones here, shall we? Good morning. What's your name?
Hey, good morning, sir. It's Drew.
Drew, how are you, sir?
Amazing.
Good.
We need to, by the way, when we discuss this question and what might happen, I think it's important that we know Dr. Collier by the full title. He is Dr. Jeff Collier.
Sure.
And that could have something to do with his perceptions and what he brings to this discussion. So,
that's a very good point. He is a doctor who, who was, I mean, and that's why I give him credit. And that's why I'm looking forward to seeing what he does with a situation like this, being a doctor, creating the CanCare program that's more privatized, which I still don't understand how the progressives hate the privatized CanCare program because it's privatized and the Republicans created it, but by the same time, we should expand it because everybody wants to be on it. I don't understand that mentality, but being a doctor, creating a more privatized program to make it a little more streamlined and efficient, I am really excited and interested to see how he's going to respond to this.
I would like to see that. I'd like to hear about that. And going into the midterms, hopefully we'll hear more about that. By the way, 2 last points. Number one, going into this session, the liberals could see their worst nightmare, and that is Governor Brownback, who recognizes that, he's out of here, he's done, he doesn't have anything that he has to keep making political hay for, and what are they going to do, hate him even more? He could go ahead and toe the hard right line and say, you want liberalization of Kansas? Screw you all. I'm vetoing it all.
Well, and that's, and we saw that towards the end of the last session, which I was very happy of, and I hope we see that again this time. As long as he is governor, yes, you know what, who cares? I mean, he's not there to impress them anymore. He's not there to play nice with them. He's on his way out, and even this is his last session, or his last year anyways, just like a lame duck presidential year, where the last one you really don't get a whole lot done. Anything that they try, veto. And if you want to get anything done, you better have the votes to be able to override a veto, because you're not getting a single thing done if I have a say about it. And that
goes to the last thing, is that one of the things we do need to consider if they expand CanCare. If you're a professional, I want you to consider the point. What if we get in another Obama-like president? Because you just heard Representative Weber. Because you know what the next thing that happens is, we now have 10,000 more people. That means we now have it legally mandated that professionals have to stay here. You have to be working where the law tells you, not where you got to go make money.
Exactly. Drew, I love it. I appreciate it. Bottom of the hour news coming up. Stay here. We got lots more coming up. This is The Voice of Reason.
Republicans and Democrats accountable. This is The Voice of Reason with Andy Hoosier.
Welcome into The Voice of Reason. Wrapping up the show today. It's gone by way too fast. I don't know where the day went, but nonetheless, welcome into it. Whether you're starting your day, ending your day, good morning to you. Happy Friday. It's a free-for-all Friday, and I want to hear from you today. 721-8255-721-TALK. You can shoot me a message all over social media as well. Great conversations. One thing we haven't gotten to today that I do want to mention on briefly as we wrap up the show, which, by the way, it is still free for all, so you can talk about and call in and talk about anything you want to. But there is something that happened yesterday or the last couple of days that Secretary of State Chris Kobach has been involved with, as President Donald Trump has dissolved and ended the Election Integrity Commission, trying to collect data from the states when it comes to voter fraud and trying to weed out voter fraud. It has ended after the numerous pile of lawsuits from the ACLU and others for I don't know what, trying to get information on people who should not be voting or should not be registered to vote in certain places, and like actually enforcing that, because one person vote apparently does not matter to the progressives, and now they have ended it. Where it goes from here, only time will tell. I'm not sure what the next step is there. At least I can say that we attempted it, and now we try again, and then we try again. And then we try again. And just because they try and pile up a whole bunch of lawsuits does not mean that we just stop, end it, and then just say, okay, well, we tried, and then just let it go. It's not what we do, and it's not what we're going to do. So Chris Kobach, no longer on the Election Integrity Commission. President Donald Trump ended up ending that, and we'll see where it goes from there. 721-8255-721-TALK. Let's go right to the phone, shall we? Good morning. What's your name?
Hi, Andy. It's Nick. How are you?
I am great, Nick. What's going on, my friend?
Oh, hey, I'm sorry I missed your 7 o'clock hour. I was in we had a chamber meeting going on, but apparently you were talking about my favorite subject, cannabis.
I was, and I'm surprised I didn't hear from you, so I'm glad you called in. I know that now you were actually at the delegation public forum a couple of nights ago as well, and I got to say, for all the cases that I've heard to legalize it, which I know you are a fan of, your argument based on constitutional values is the most sane argument that I've heard out of anyone other than just saying, hey, man, let me do my thing. That at least makes sense when you advocate it for it that way.
Right. Well, thank you. I guess if we're going to stay away from identity politics and not put any emotion into it and look at reason,
yes,
then I look at the Controlled Substances Act. And in that act, there are substances that are exempt from the Controlled Substances Act, such as things like alcohol and tobacco. And we know that alcohol and tobacco kill, lots of people, more than even opioids and all this other stuff that we call crises.
Mm-hmm.
And for us as a conservative, in a constitutional republic that says 64% of America says cannabis should be legalized. Now, I don't want to go down the road. I'm a family man. I'm not for any changing of the marriage issue. I'm not for, I'm a protector of life.
Sure.
And I think that's what we're talking about is having this grow and not kill it off, because it's not fair for the other, for this industry. We need a rebirth in it because it's been hammered down so much to allow other industries to take all the fun, shall we say. And, whether you talk about cannabis without a high level of THC, because all cannabis has THC in it.
Sure.
It's just that it's grown a certain way to have more.
Well, and let me ask you that, because and I do agree that the controlled substance list does need to be revised and updated a little bit because it is a little old. Now, when you go to the liquor store and you buy a case of beer, you buy a bottle of whiskey, it says right on there, exactly the percentage of what alcohol is in there. 32%
right.
and 40 proof, or it's 3.2 beer you get at the grocery store, whatever you end up getting. You know exactly the percentage, which means you know exactly based on how much or how little that you drink on a frequent basis, how much it's going to affect you in that sense. The problem with marijuana, and Colorado's seen this, when they legalized it and they've tried to sell it recreationally in that sense, that only 13% or 18%, all of the labels on the bottles of the buds when you buy it actually have an accurate percentage of the THC, because every single plant that you grow, it has a different level of THC. The reason that I think that the controlled substance it's still on there to some degree in that sense is because right now we have no way of mainstreaming the THC level to make it consistent across the board. So you could be doing a quick little bud or a little hit or whatever you thinking it's a small amount. You can go to work, you can drive, you can do whatever words afterwards because you do it a lot and it's not going to be a high amount. And then you could get a bud that could be very potent. And right now we don't have a whole lot of consistency.
I run a restaurant, and we use real butter, and we're not dependent on the government for our stuff. You can make your own beer,
sure,
and you can make your own wine, and you can make your own vegetables and stuff. So the bully mentality, the identity politics of picking on this one plant because somebody has whatever reason to do so, I don't know. It is not reasonable, and it's not constitutional. And as conservatives, we are showing ourselves to not be true to what we stand for. And I'm just going to continue on, hopefully chipping away at it till we can get something done that's a positive and growth for our state, agriculture state of Kansas.
Sure. Well, and here's where I agree with you. I agree that conservatives need to be consistent when it comes to regulation and controlling certain things. Marijuana needs to be, I think, on somewhat of the radar just for the idea of interstate commerce with it traveling from state to state, but being on the controlled substance list and being heavily regulated is what Jeff Sessions would like. I do disagree with. I think it should be up to the states as being state sovereign, and with the 10th Amendment, I mean, the Constitution doesn't really give the government the choice to regulate something like that, but under the 10th Amendment, it should be up to the states.
Right.
But on the experience that I've seen, I would still be under the sense that I think the states should make the right choice by not necessarily legalizing it. Now, I am all for the agricultural hemp. I am all for the growing of the hemp for the agricultural side, for the lack of THC in there to grow the industry in that sense.
I don't think we can piecemeal it, sir, and that's my deal. Where we are as conservatives, we don't piecemeal things like that. A bump stock or anything. No, we have our rights that are given to us by God, and you're supposed to protect them and foster an environment for good economic development. End of story.
Sure. What would you say, and I know we're kind of rattling back and forth on some different angles of this, because I just want to get your take on all this. It's a fascinating discussion, and I know that a lot of times I am in the minority when it comes to wanting to keep marijuana illegal because, well, everybody does it. Yeah, they do, and I don't agree with people knocking on the door and saying, hey, are you smoking it in your basement, and we're going to punish you and arrest you for that. But out in public, I don't like it. What about the sense of the government? We always talk about the size of the government and regulation in that sense. If we legalize this, it's going to create an entirely new government department and agency to regulate it. We're going to get an entirely new tax revenue for the government for them to be dependent on another tax revenue. If it was legalized and it said you grow it in your home, you do whatever you want to, and we're not going to look at it, we're not going to regulate it, then I would be in more favor of that. And then the sense of, well, we're spending X amount of money to enforce it right now, but the amount of money they're going to get revenue-wise that they're going to not save or spend responsibly, but they're going to spend wastefully, like Colorado has done. They increased massive amounts of tax revenue in the state, and instead of actually paying things off and putting money away, they've increased their spending so much with new agencies and new spending habits and everything they wanted to do. They're in the same boat we were almost, with close to $300 to $400 million in a deficit. And now once other states begin to legalize it, their 300% tax rate that they're going to put on these things, it's going to blow up, it's going to burst, and then they're going to be in an economic crisis. I don't want to be in the same situation here.
There was a guy called Eisenhower, and he was a little bit more moderate than we are, but he said there was a balance. And we have to respect that balance, whether it's in economics or philosophy or morals, whatever the case may be. There has to be that balance, and it has to be attached to what you say and what I believe in, the rule of law and the Constitution. Mm-hmm. And the way we are handling cannabis is not how we should be doing it. And we can talk about the economics and everything, but I like to take it down to the bare bones and look at it from the most inner core, the peanut part, and this is who we are as conservatives.
Sure.
And cannabis prohibition is the antithesis of our values.
Well, and that's where we would agree. I mean, I don't think we agree on how it should be changed, but we both agree that it should be changed in a different level. So, and that's why I love it. Nick, I know that you and I pretty much agree on just about everything except for the marijuana issue, which is why I love it. So I really appreciate the call, my friend, and it's a great one. It's a great conversation to have because I think it's going to continue to be a hot issue that they're going to be pushing in the state of Kansas, and a lot of people are going to be pushing from both sides of the aisle for a long time. Does it need to be changed on how we're going about this, either enforcing it at the federal level or not enforcing it? Yes. Should we change it based on the state's decisions? Yes. And then from there, we can go about it. It's kind of like the difference between the libertarians and conservatives, where the libertarians want to branch off and do their own third-party thing because they're tired of the Republicans, tired of the Democrats. They want to go about it their own way, which I get, but you're harming your agenda more so than helping it. And we may differ between conservatives and libertarians on issues like social issues like marijuana, and even on international issues and domestic policy, but at the same time, those are minuscule if both of us have too little taxes or too little income with such high tax rates that we can't begin to debate those little minuscule things. And we need to partner up on the things we do align and agree with, and we need to fight them with one unified voice. That's kind of the same situation I'm seeing when it comes to marijuana. Let's take one more phone call before we take a break, shall we? Good morning. What's your name?
It's Wallace.
Wallace, how are you, sir?
I'm a little confused by the whole marijuana talk.
Okay.
I don't do drugs. I've never done drugs. I don't want to do drugs. I have more self-control, and I'm not going to, allow my life to be dictated and put my freedom at risk to smoke a weed. And here's my problem with marijuana. It's bad enough we, as a society, suffer the effects of alcohol. And look, I'm not saying if you have a glass of wine, you're a bad person. I'm not saying if you smoke a joint, you're a bad person.
Sure.
But, we've seen the effects of where marijuana leads you. We know it's the gateway drug. It takes from point A to point B. But here's my problem. One, the libertarian in me says, you know what? You want to wreck your life? You want to do all that? Go ahead, do it.
All the
You're an
power
adult.
to you, right?
That's right. But the problem is when they lose their job, they get into my pocket on public assistance. Now I'm paying for your habit. I'm paying to support you, your wife, and your kids because you just can't control yourself. You got to smoke an herb. And also, I don't want to get on an airplane at 35,000 feet going 500 miles an hour that was worked on by a guy that was baked the night before.
Well, and it brings up an interesting point. I mean, you can't show up to work drunk right now. I mean, if you show up to work drunk and you put people's lives in danger, or you're not effective in your job, then you're going to lose your job because you're not effective in that. If you smoked the night before and you had a great time doing it and everything, and you may be clear-minded the next day, but you go to work and you get a drug test and the work says a no tolerance when it comes to THC or to marijuana with something like that, then that brings up an entirely new Pandora's box of legalities of, is it okay for you to smoke the night before, or if you still have it in your system a day or 2 days later, do they have the right to be able to fire you? And it really brings up the situation on where do the workers' rights versus the company's rights end?
Now you're in my pocket, and now I'm paying. If you lost your job, even if you're not stoned when you come to work and they drug test you and you fail,
sure.
Now you're in my pocket.
Sure.
Now I have a right to say, no, you're not going to do that. I want it regulated. Now, the other thing, too, real quick, this whole immigration thing, Donald Trump, I got a chuckling about it yesterday because of all this talk about DACA. And Donald Trump is mad at California, and rightfully so, for being a sanctuary state, sanctuary city.
Sure.
And saying, you have no right to allow these illegals to stay. But isn't that what he's trying to cut a deal on to do, is to allow about 1 million DACA people to stay? Doing exactly what California just did.
Well, I have not heard, maybe you've followed it a little bit closer than I have with President Trump. Has he made a comment or a statement saying that he's willing to negotiate to allow DACA recipients to stay? Or is he still pretty hardlined of, no, we can't allow that to happen? The last I had heard, he had kind of hinted towards that, but every time he makes a bold statement, he says, yeah, no, we're not going to try and allow DACA recipients to stay here.
Yeah, what is being talked about now is, if we get the funding for the wall, if we get an end to chain migration, if we get an end to some of these other things, then that has to be part of any DACA deal. But here's what people have to understand, and people, please call the White House, email the White House. I don't care. First of all, if they give the money for a wall, it's going to be tied up in litigation and EPA things for years. We'll never see the wall. We will get the amnesty immediately. We will not get the wall, ever. Now, Let's say we get the wall. Who's the next president? Could you imagine if we build a wall and we toughen up all our border security, Hillary Clinton gets in, do you think she's going to keep that wall?
No, she's going to make her statement, Mrs. Clinton, tear down this wall.
And
I can see it already.
Yeah, and we'll be stuck with the amnesty, and we'll have no border security. And I've been all over Twitter saying, amnesty is permanent. Border security is temporary. These people will turn around and vote for candidates and politicians that will undo all the good Donald Trump has done. And to cut a deal for that, you are a complete idiot. You are and I will say that if Donald Trump wants to pick the phone up, I say, you cut a deal like that, you're an idiot.
I agree. Wallace, I hate to cut you off. We got to take a break here, but you're absolutely right. I am in no fan of whatsoever of wanting to repeal DACA, wanting to keep DACA recipients remaining in the country in any way, shape, or form. Even if we get the funding for immigration, even if we get the wall, like you said, the next administration, just like what Barack Obama did, start ignoring immigration policy. We don't need immigration reform. We just need to enforce the laws that are actually on the books. And if we allow them to stay, just like during Ronald Reagan when he made the negotiation with the Democrats, fool me once, shame on you. Fool me twice, shame on me. If Ronald Reagan did it back then and they allowed it and we still have an immigration problem, what do you think is going to happen if we try and make that deal again today? No, 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 and no. That's where we draw the line in the sand, and there would be a lot of conservatives very upset with President Trump if that happens. Got some other callers on the line. Stay tuned. We got one more segment to go, wrapping up the show today on a Friday. This is The Voice of Reason. Stay here.
You're listening to The Voice of Reason with Andy Hoosier.
you know, it's a Friday, which I know you're excited about, being the first Friday after the new year, the first Friday of 2018. It's the first free-for-all Friday of 2018, and I think a successful one that it's been today. I love all the conversations and phone calls. It is also the very first Fried Chicken Friday at the Inman Harvest Cafe for 2018, 112 South Main Street in downtown Inman, just north of Hutchinson. They got the big, it's a buffet from 11 to 1 today, the big buffet from 5 to 8 o'clock tonight with the free slice of pie that goes along with it for the evening buffet. Katie's on the line with us. Katie, the first Fried Chicken Friday of 2018, those are kind of big shoes to fill.
Happy Fried Chicken Friday, by the way. I actually had not really recognized the fact that this was the first one of the year, and that's appropriate because it's all kinds of crazy here.
All kinds of crazy. You guys are just having way too much fun up there. It is the fresh chicken, the homemade breading. It is the wonderful goodies that go along with it. It's all the types of pies. It's the 2 different buffets. It is the day you look forward to every single week.
That's right. It's the perfect way to wrap up a week. So today, besides the fried chicken that we have every Friday, because we wouldn't call it Fried Chicken Friday if we didn't, we are going to have a Reuben casserole. So that's got like a, you know what like a puff pastry is, okay?
Okay.
So it's got like a puff pastry crust on the bottom. It's got sauerkraut. It's got corned beef. It's got the saucy stuff and a Swiss cheese, and then it's got another puff pastry crust on the top. So it's kind of like a Reuben pot pie.
Ooh,
That's
like
what
it.
it is.
That sounds delicious. Yes.
Yeah. It's really good. And then that's kind of right up your alley, isn't it? Corned beef and stuff like that.
You got me with the corned beef there, and especially being a little cold and the winter finally hitting us. I mean, a pot pie sounds really, really good just to warm up.
Yeah. So then we're also going to have chicken cordon bleu, which is a chicken with a sauce. We like saucy, cheesy stuff here. So we've got that and ham, and then, of course, it's got a crunchy breadcrumb topping on top. And then we will also, from 5 to 8, if you come, the evening buffet always comes with our famous roast beef on it.
Very good.
So that's slow roasting right now. And then the fried chicken, mashed potatoes, vegetables, scalloped potatoes with ham, that's the other thing. So that's going to be a different kind of scalloped potato than what we usually make with baked potatoes and bacon bits and cheese and sour cream and a little green onion sprinkled on top. So that'll be like a baked scalloped potato. So,
I love it. I love it.
Yeah, and then let me run down the pie list for you really, really fast because we have different pies every week. This week we have coconut meringue, chocolate cream cheese, cherry cream cheese, custard, apple, and sour cream raisins. So those are the choices that you've got for your buffet tonight, plus whatever we decide to throw together at the last minute this afternoon to make sure that everybody has a free slice of pie tonight when they come.
Everybody's got the free slice of pie. I love it. It's making me hungry already at 9 o'clock in the morning. I know you guys are all excited and ready to go. I hear all the noise in the background, which means people are already excited because it's just going to be that awesome. It is the Inman Harvest Cafe. It is the Fried Chicken Friday. Don't miss it. 112 South Main Street, downtown Inman. Katie, you guys have fun today. Enjoy Fried Chicken Friday, and we'll catch up with you again next week.
All right, that sounds great. Talk to you then.
Always a pleasure there. That's the Inman Harvest Cafe. We appreciate them joining us here on the show. We literally got about 30 seconds left of the show, but I want to take one more phone call as we wrap up today. Good morning. What's your name?
Hi, Andy. It's Pam.
Good morning, Pam. How are you?
Oh, I'm good. How are you?
Oh, we're loving it. We're loving it. We got about 20 seconds. What's on your mind?
All right. Well, I just, this thing with the immigration, about 10 years ago, Congress, both houses, passed the wall. We passed funding for the wall. We've already spent all the money for the wall.
Of course. And where is it?
And nothing ever got a couple miles in California got built.
That's right.
So what happened to that law?
That's a good question, Pam. I appreciate it. We funded it. We passed it. Where is it? It better happen this year or else there's going to be a lot of angry Republicans. Have a great weekend, everybody.